So I wanted to do a quick refresher on selective editing in Photoshop and give some examples of when I might use them. So in this image, there are a lot of things going on, and I want to draw attention into the focal point of the image and not so much to some of the surrounding things. So what I'm going to do is to grab the linear gradient tool and probably darken down the house on the left, the structure on the right, the wall on the bottom, and maybe even lighten or draw more attention to this window up here or the main central doorway. So I'm going to click and drag and make a gradient that kind of matches the level of my foreground. I'll pull it down though because I don't want to darken too much of the door. And I'll go back in and I'll kind of readjust this to the point where the brick is not really drawing my eye over to these corners. So I think that's fairly good. I'm going to go and hit new and do the same thing on the right side here. Now the sky is really going to be noticeable if I have this too dramatic. So I'm going to kind of feather it out. I'll probably take this to be not decreasing so much. Something like that. And I'll do the same sort of thing over here. Okay. Now the thing I like about this module is that I can just turn on and off this switch and it'll turn on and off all these settings. So you can see already that it's really kind of toning down these things that are outside of what I really want my viewer to look at. Now I'm going to go up. I'm actually going to lighten towards the top. So I'll grab a new one, and I'm going to pull it towards the positive instead. Something like that maybe. Again, that's a bit much, so I'm going to kind of pull it back down. Let the top be a little bit darker than the center. And now I can really kind of see some of that detail up in the window and the reflection in the window. So those are the types of things I would do to the overall image. I could also have just used the radial gradient because I've kind of done all four edges of the photo. So I could have just perhaps pulled a radial gradient here, pulling downward, and you see how it's going to kind of darken everything but what's inside the circle. Or if I really wanted to do it the opposite way, I could darken or perhaps lighten only what's inside the circle. But I've kind of done that already with my linears, so I think I'm going to delete that one. And I'm going to zoom in. I can kind of move around my frame by holding down the spacebar. When I zoom in, I can see my tripod in the reflection. So one of the things I'm going to try and do here is to use the healing brush, and I'm going to size down my brush pretty small, and I can kind of click on, you can, I guess I should say, you can do individual clicks to retouch small things. You can click and drag to kind of make a blob, the shape of something. I'm going to pull out of this smoother area up at the top. Or what I can do in the case of this tripod is just make a shape that matches that, and again pull from an area that has the texture that I'd like to go in there, and that's going to help reduce how noticeable it is. I'm being careful not to go over this joint in the middle here. And I'm putting in some smoothness in ways that probably are going to be seen as too smooth, so I may have to come back around. So this area right in here, particularly between these, I think I'm going to need to make a blob about that shape, and again pull it up over here. Now I can flip on and off all of that retouching. So there's before and after. It's not perfect, but I'm going to zoom out. And I think, particularly at that scale, it's going to be much less noticeable. Okay. So that's kind of the most distracting things to retouch out. I wouldn't do a lot of retouching, but that seems to be something easy to handle. And then I'm going to go in and I'm going to do some sort of selective adjustments, drawing attention to things I want to highlight or drawing attention away from things I don't want. So I kind of want my viewer to read the address in here. And I think I need to scale my window a little bit wider here so I can see the whole address. And with the adjustment brush, I can make non-circular shapes. So I'm going to grab the brush. It's pretty hard. So let me adjust the softness here. Oh, no, the feather is pretty high up. Okay. So I'm going to go ahead, I'm going to drag. And I'm using a fairly soft brush because I know that it will kind of look funny if I go too hard here. And I'm painting in too much of an adjustment. This is getting really bright, but this will work fairly well to then dial that slider back down. Okay, for the purpose of saving time with recording, I'm going to just erase the mistake I made over here and say, all right, that's close enough that I think it'll be okay. But of course, fine tune it if you're doing something on your own. Now I'm going to pull down my exposure until it's just doing a little bit. And you can turn on and off the box again here to see what it was like before and what it's doing now. And let's zoom all the way out. And I'll turn that off again. Back on. Okay, so that's still a little too bright, but I think you're getting the idea of what I'm trying to do is to just bring up a little bit of attention towards that sign so people tend to really notice it. Okay. And then I'm going to do a few things. So you can draw attention to what you want people to look at by lightening it. And you can take attention away from things that you don't want people to look at. Zoom out all the way here. And so what I'm kind of looking at is there's this sort of brighter area to the left side of the door. And I still feel like the window up top could be a little brighter. So I'm going to do those two things because I kind of want the eye to be drawn up to that window, but not to this fairly bright area here. So I'll go in and I'll do a new brush, this time pulling downward. I'm going to make my brush fairly large. I'm holding down the right bracket key on the keyboard. And something in this ballpark should be good. And then I'll tone it back down a little. And now when I zoom all the way out, I'm going to turn on and off all of these. Yeah, I kind of like what that's doing. Now, I'll go back in and go up to this top window. Make myself a new brush. And oh, I'm painting darkening, and I want to pull it up. So let me get that right. Okay. Now, again, I don't want that to be so bright. I'll bring it back down, probably somewhere around there. And I'm going to zoom back out. And we'll turn all these on and off. So yeah, that kind of brings my eye up to this window, some that interesting detail I want to be seen. brings my eye away from the darks, or what is the light spot now, darkens it down, brings a little attention to that sign or the address. So those are the sorts of basic adjustments I would kind of focus on. We would call the darkening burning, and we would call the lightening dodging, and those are the darkroom terms for them. But you could just call them brighten up and darken down or something to that effect. Just know that if I'm ever saying those terms, that's what they mean. And so that is really what we would normally do, is just use all these tools to lighten and darken different areas, to draw attention or away from, or to and away from things that we want to be seen or don't want to be seen and want to be focused on or not.